According to a Gallup study, 70% of employees say that their boss has a higher impact on their mental health than their therapist or doctor. And this impact does not only have to be negative, to be clear. However, we are living in a world where many employees record having a toxic boss and being deprived in energy and feeling depressed even because of a toxic leader. And if you really look behind that, it comes down to one thing. It comes down to one variable, insecurity. I have talked with a lot of high performers who are suffering from toxic bosses. And the truth is, those toxic leaders, they look very powerful. But behind that facade, there's a really insecure person behind it, which makes a high performer a big threat to them. Because if they're really afraid of not being good enough, and if they're insecure because they're afraid of losing control, somebody who's really shining bright their light might be a threat because they're afraid of being exposed as exactly that, not good enough, not competent enough. So today in this episode, we'll spot a light on the insecurity behind toxic bosses, what it means for high performers like you, and what you can actually do about it. But before we dive in, please make sure that you like and subscribe this episode and even give it a high rating. That way we'll ensure that many high performers out there that suffer from toxic leadership have the possibility to learn and grow together with us. I appreciate you. Now let's dive in. This is a Corporate Warriors podcast and I'm your host, Fela Rosa. This episode is going to be split up in 3 parts. We're going to dive in first with the question: is your boss's insecurity the real problem? Then we're going to look at part number 2, what that really means for high performance, and then follow up straight with the actionable items on what you can actually do about it. As usual, we'll have some reflection prompts for you so that you can really take a deep dive and reflect and create that awareness that you need to actually make a move for yourself and for your career. Now let's dive in. How can you actually tell if your toxic boss has really insecurity as a root cause for their behavior? And while those are not bulletproof points, you can totally double check them and it will give you an indication. So one thing that insecure bosses definitely do is they will micromanage you, right? Because they want to control the outcome. They're really afraid that something might fall on their feet if their manager or their executive above them says, why did this go wrong? And they want to control everything, which makes them in the end micromanagers. Because let's be honest, they have a trust issue. If you take this very first example, you can already see if the micromanaging is based on the root cause of insecurity, you pushing back with a very strong boundary on the spot without really opening up your boss for that will create even more insecurity. So we really need to be working on those root causes, understand what's going on so that you can act really strategically with your boss and make sure that you get back into a state where you can actually enjoy working for them or for somebody else. Another big red flag is if they get really defensive, if they get some sort of feedback, even if it's really constructive. If they get anything beside praise, beside you saying you're the best manager I've ever had, they will get defensive because they will see it as an attack and they will heavily depend on the hierarchy to reinforce their importance, to make them feel secure. So they will not accept even a very logical, very constructive, very positive feedback. Even if it's something about team dynamics, they might see that as an attack towards their leadership skills. Also, a typical one for toxic bosses that might indicate that they're really insecure is taking the credit for your hard work. Now, I totally agree that that doesn't have to be based on insecurity, but it very likely does. And lastly, they'll do anything to make sure that you as a high performer in their team will not think that you're better than them in any kind of way. So they will try to talk you down, they will try to put a spotlight on your failures versus not talk about your successes, and they will try to compare you whenever you are worse off than somebody else, but not compare you when you're doing actually a great job. That way they keep you small and make sure that you do not trigger their insecurities by shining your full light. So if you notice these kinds of patterns, it's not necessarily about performance, it might really be about the insecurity of your boss. So it's really important for you to understand that, so that no matter what your boss does, you first come up with the right strategy, and second, you don't let it affect you as your person and your worthiness. You are still enough, you're still a high performer, you just cannot really get a reward in this environment if this is the case for you. So you need to come up with a strategy and exit plan that works for you again. So let's dive in deeper on what that really means for you as a high performer. If you have a truly insecure boss, your strengths will become kind of what threatens them the most. So the better that you become, the more they will try to exclude you, try to set you up for failure, and do all of those things. Because the better you perform, the more they feel threatened. And as a next step, what might happen is that you might actually constantly lose a little bit of your confidence. Slowly but steadily, it will be chipped away. Why? Because if you're unaware of what's going on, you cannot point it out. So as perhaps until now, feedback has always helped you to grow, you'll take every single feedback very personally and very at heart because you genuinely try to improve through the feedback. However, if the feedback strategically is set in place for you to be small, to be kept small, then that is not helping you at all. And you taking it at heart is actually making the situation worse. What all high performers risk in those kinds of situations is running into burnout, because very, very often high performers, myself included, but everybody I've talked to, have the same kind of pattern. We try to outwork challenges. So if there's an obstacle, we just put in more work. But if you have a boss that is truly insecure by your strength and by what you bring to the table, even by your network, they might make sure to make you run from left to right and left to right, change the priorities, change the goalposts, change the processes, so that you just cannot be successful. But if you use those old strategies, you will at some point run into burnout if you don't wake up soon enough. And I hope this podcast is actually helping you do that. Third, in the long term, if you stay in that kind of situation, your reputation might be damaged, because this toxic and insecure boss especially will want to ruin your network. The reason is that networks are actually a great security net and safety net for you. And this manager will want to make sure that their word is more important than yours if things get wild. So while they might take any kind of opportunity to put you in the wrong spotlight, you are not even aware of it in the beginning. So make sure that you don't stay too long under the influence of an insecure toxic boss, because it will actually be detrimental for you and your network and your reputation to take back charge of that. And lastly, as we all know, this takes an emotional toll over time. All the people that reach out to me personally have issues with anxiety. Some even are really close to depression, and they're definitely in a negative downward spiral. Some of them thinking they're not enough, some of them having their confidence crushed. So if this is you, you might be in a situation where your toxic boss is actually acting from a place of insecurity and using all of their intelligence and tools and strategies against you because you are a threat at this point. So they want to make sure that any kind of safety net, any kind of network, any kind of positive feedback that you still had from the past will get degraded in importance, and more negative stuff will be piled on top, so that your reputation and your standing and your confidence will truly take a hit. And I know it is super hard. I get you. But this is why we need to act, because waiting it out won't work. It will just get worse and worse. So what can you actually do about that? First, documentation. Keep track of the promises, of the actions. Keep track of the changes. Try to keep track of everything with screenshots if possible. Try to have everything written out, not verbal. It's really easy to afterwards turn around and be like, that wasn't what I said. Everybody can do that. So make sure that you get your important things in writing. This really protects you from gaslighting. Then make sure that you detach your self-worth from your job. If you don't know how to do it, check out the episode. I'm going to link here, or just look for the episode in my podcast. This is a must do, because careers always get hard. At some point, there will always be a downward point in your career sooner or later. It's just because careers are so long and so intense that this always happens. So the sooner you can detach your self-worth from your career success, the better you'll be off, and the more objective and strategic you can take a look at your career. Third, make sure to manage expectations right, especially your own. Don't try to get this validation from your boss. If you really need somebody to tell you that you do a good job, look at your peers, look at the people that you've worked beforehand. As you're a high performer on my channel, I know that there are many people that are rooting for you. So make sure you get those LinkedIn recommendations and read through them regularly. Also, make sure that you strengthen your boundaries. I don't say be super harsh on them. It needs to be tactful and strategic, but do have some boundaries for yourself in place to make sure that you are not fully immersed in their game. right? This is about you having the possibility to take a step back. But if you're working 24/7, taking a step back is literally impossible. So it's important for you to have those boundaries. Even if you say you have a super demanding job, I don't know, you work on Wall Street and you have to work really long hours, have rituals in place so that when you're at home, you're actually at home. When you're off work, you're actually off work. You can put your stuff away, make sure you don't see any work-related things. You can light some candles, some Palo Santo, include your senses such as your smell sense, so that you really reconnect differently with yourself and you have like a process or a little step-by-step thing in place that makes you realize now is free time. And then obviously plan your next step, because you cannot stay there. If you have a truly insecure, toxic leader, you as a high performer will not make it. Even if it feels like sometimes they help you, they only do that if they really, really need you, and they will drop you after. They will make sure that you will not get ahead. I promise you, that's just not in their logic. It doesn't make sense to them. If they really feel threatened by you, why would they want to help a threat rise? Doesn't make any sense. So really understand that. You can make a sidestep, you can do any kind of moves. Just make sure that this specific person is not responsible for your career success. And lastly, please never forget to do the inner work as well, because you need to take a good look at what is triggered by you. When people reach out to me, they are often crushed, like in a way that is not professional anymore, to be honest. So you need to take a good look what is triggered inside of you by their actions. And only by healing that, only by taking a look at that and work with that and get over that, you'll be able to be truly unshakable no matter what your leader looks like. You'll be able to see the red flags way sooner if you have a truly insecure and toxic leader. You will even be able probably to spot them in the interviews. So you will not get that far, that deep down that negative spiral to begin with. So do the inner work. Don't skip on that. Don't be like, I just leave and everything's fine. No, please do the inner work and then you'll be fine for the rest of your career. So let's dive into the reflection. And those are just some short reflections. Just press pause after each and go into your body and just feel how it resonates, what comes to mind. Let's start with this. Does your boss act weirdly when you are truly successful? Instead of, genuinely being happy for you because you're part of their team, they act weirdly. That might be a red flag. A second red flag that might indicate that your boss has insecurity topics is that whenever you have meetings with other executives, they have to be there and they have to make sure that they get a piece of the pie if the pie is successful, but don't if it's not. Third, do you kind of feel like they constantly compare you with others in order to put you down, and also compare you to them so that they can always signal back to you that they're above you, not just in the hierarchy, which is very important to them, but also in terms of skills and competence, that you understand that you are smaller and not as important and not as successful. And lastly, if your leader is constantly surrounding themselves with yes people, that might also be an indicator that they're insecure because they don't want to be threatened in their opinion. So they'd rather have people around that always foster them and tell them how great they are, but never can have people around them that are just raw, on the spot, and tell the truth for the sake of advancing as a company or as a team. So if you said yes to at least two of these, you might be at risk of having an insecure, toxic leader. So make sure that you do all the things that we've discussed in this podcast. And you can, of course, also reach out if you want a personal support and strategies to make it and come out stronger, not weaker. Because the difference of someone who makes it to versus somebody who doesn't make it is not really about performance at this point. It's about understanding the patterns and then adapting your strategies and tactics to them. It's about being aware of what's truly going on the surface level and also underneath, so that you are able to work on both levels. If this episode was of any help to you, if it resonated with you, make sure that you like it, that you hit the subscribe button, and that you also make sure to give it a rating and forward it to a colleague that needs to hear this. I'm here rooting for you. I'll see you back next time.